Good night, Kathy. I don't see why not. Go ahead. Nobody's going to yell at you, and if they do, blame me.
Thank you so much for the napkin.
Yes. What do I want? Love snickerdoodle.
Hey, Evan. Evan.
I did see it down there in the car when I I'm hoping he said something. Wow. This is amazing.
Everyone thinks everyone hates
If you didn't get the double chocolate milk, I'm literally gonna cry.
10 out of 10.
Oh yeah, love to see it.
Yo.
Love to see it.
I'm not cutting this one in that.
No, you're not just coming here for the napkin.
Robbie, are you up here?
Yes.
Okay.
You guys are sick. People like you should not be allowed to get news. You cannot take this.
Stop, I'm poor. I can only get it every month. So I'm only get it every 2 weeks.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, every 2 weeks. Yeah, that's great. That's just your. So I think that they can do that. Okay, they're down on me. Today. I just.
Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh, never mind. Oh, I thought you said yeah. Never mind. No. They can't say it.
Actually, you're not supposed to. You're not
Evan, can you hear me?
I don't think this is perfect because I like when they're not more.
I mean a permanent. I'm disappointed that meant your anything.
So many.
Perhaps the only acceptable thing there.
You'll note that I said, she said. I did not say that I believe that.
Oh, that you would in fact try.
Find your seats over the course of the next 2 minutes. We'll fix that. Godson, that's a full suit.
Baylor campus?
And USG.
You here to attend the meeting? Yeah. I told Ivan we needed more gaff tape. Yeah, because we're running our last roll of tape inside the bag. It was Chip's birthday today. That guy over there, his birthday. Yeah.
7:37 p.m.
Can you set your iris?
We've taken care of attendance up here. Is there anyone here for public comment? Anyone in the audience of citizens would like to comment publicly? No? Okay. With that, we will now move into approval of the minutes. We have a motion to approve the minutes from 10/2/2019. Motion goes to Frank, second goes to Knight. Is there any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? What do I say again? What is it? Motion clearly, in the opinion of the chair, the motion clearly passes. The second item is a motion to approve the minutes from 10/9/2019. Do we have such a motion? Motion goes to Collins, second goes to Reynolds. Is there any discussion on these minutes? Seeing none, we move into a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, motion carries. Now we will move into a motion of extreme confidence. Senator Howie, are you here? Yeah, I've got the motion up on the agenda. Can you stand up and say who you make it for?
They are not here, so.
You can still recognize them.
Okay, sure. So, actually, I prefer not to.
Fair enough. We'll do that some other time, right? All right. Now we'll move into reports. Before I continue, I know we've been moving in a pretty expedient fashion, but many of you have placards now, so I want to demonstrate the proper method in which to utilize your placard. If you wish to speak on something or ask a question, hold your placard like this, and we'll put you down on the speakers list, and when it gets to you, you can either ask your question or make your statement, whichever you choose. If you care to make a motion, hold your placard like this. I'm going to prioritize motions over speaking because if you're like got a motion to end debate or motion to amend, those things should be done as soon as possible. So again, it's this if you want on the list, it's this if you want a motion. A third thing, if you don't know what's going on, hold your placard upside down like this, and I will call on you immediately. This is the biggest priority to me because if you like don't know what's happening, like I want to communicate to all of you what is happening. Don't be afraid to do that, especially you veteran senators, simply because like at times, even I myself get confused with what's going on and need to stop. So I see now many of you are simply turning your placards upside down. I appreciate the humor in that. But anyway, move back into reports.
If you guys have any typos on your placards or something's wrong about that, just at the end of Senate or just like let me know and I'll make a note of it so we can fix it.
We will now move to the report of the External Affairs.
That was fast.
Yeah, we're going
People ahead of me.
I'm here for
All right. This week we finished up our advocacy agenda, so we'll be considering that here tonight. Last week we finished up our updated our standing rules, so that will come before the Senate as well tonight. We've been working on our Community Service Day, right now slated for November 2nd from 10 to 2. You'll get an email about that shortly once I have more of that information finalized. To that end, there is I forgot where I was going with that. We have just finished up, or earlier this week I had a meeting with PERG and the President. We talked about how we were going to coordinate for Get Out the Vote effort for November 5th, which is an election day. This particular year, we have a ballot referenda that requires 15% of the electorate to turn out and vote. 50%, 50, of the electorate is made up by UConn students. So if UConn students show up, then there's a significant and great chance of that referenda being a valid vote. And we will see, hopefully, legislation on that coming before the Senate in our next meeting. With that, I'll go to questions.
Are there any questions for the External Affairs Chair? Seeing none, we'll move into the report of the Student Services Chair, which will be given by Holly Ann Lounge.
I don't want to use this microphone. I'll just talk really loud, I guess. Derek can't be here right now, so I'm just going to give his report for him. It's not that long, so hang in there. Hope everyone is doing well in midterms. Apologies for not making the Senate. Derek's just feeling a little under the weather. Student Services just finished spearheading Mental Illness Awareness Week last week and are looking forward to further initiatives. Coming soon, they're hosting another mental health first aid certification on November 9th and collaborating with RHA on a mental health town hall, pushing for required mental health training for Tier 2 leaders through Solid. They're also working on receiving and installing the new tampon time dispensers and hosting self-defense classes in collaboration with UCTV. And if you have any questions, just email us at studentservices@usg.uconn.edu. Thanks.
Awesome. We will now move into the report of the Student Development Chair. The report will be given by Dalton Howard.
Good evening, everyone. I am not Chairperson Aponte, but my gift to you shall be her reports. Okay, Cultural Appreciation Series. Kicking off next week, our Roots on Canvas event will be on Monday, and Appreciation versus Appropriation panel will be on Friday. It's Monday and Friday of next week. We would appreciate if you all would share the Instagram posts and flyers on your social media. Volunteer sheets have been sent through the GroupMe and Student Development listserv. If anyone wants to volunteer, which would be very helpful, and does not have the volunteer sheet, please email me. November events for the Cultural Awareness Series. On November 5th, Illuminating the Path event featuring Rita Morano, with Subog and Perlag cooperating for the event. On November 7th, there's the History and Feminism of Reggaeton with the African Student Association, Puerto Rican Student Association, Damas, and Afro-Latinx student groups. On November 11th, we have a keynote speaker coming in to talk about Native American cultural appropriation and stereotypes. The Fall Leadership Dinner is happening on November 4th. Invitations have been sent out, and we are working on some activities with committee members. If anyone is interested in getting involved in the activity planning, contact Joshua or Tina. Differently Abled Students Day, that will be happening on December 3rd from 1 to 4 p.m. in this room. We have reached out to various Tier 2 student organizations whose advocacy agendas align with the spirit of the event. So we're currently collaborating with them to make the event successful. We're also planning to reach out to CSD and Student Health Services so that they can have representatives from administration also attend. Any questions about that? Email us. Historical Appreciation Initiative. I had a very productive meeting with Senator Villani today. Essentially, we outlined a couple of the buildings we want to look at, a couple of the landscapes we want to look at and work with. We discovered some very useful information regarding this initiative and the master plan moving forward, and we created a broad outline of how this project will progress through USG and into the coming months. Legislation coming through student developments. The Native American Cultural Program expansion legislation is currently going through student development, as is the Tier 2 Student Leader Mandatory Mental Health Training Initiative. It's also going through student services, student development. If you have any questions about any of those, feel free to email myself, the speaker, or Chairperson Aponte, and we will direct those answers accordingly. Thank you.
All right, now we will move into the report of the Academic Affairs Chair. For Josh or Tina? Okay, yeah, that's right. He said he'd be late. So we'll move back into the Academic Affairs report when he arrives. We'll move to the Internal Affairs report.
Hello, everybody. for all those who don't know, I don't run a student senate standing committee. The committee that I oversee, that I'm the chairperson of, is called the Internal Affairs Committee. We handle incoming bills, resolutions, work with the authors to further develop legislative purpose through the documents that we put through our organization, which so far, as you'll see tonight, there are 2 bills that the Internal Affairs Committee is sponsoring, both from Chairperson Douglas. We were able to move those great through committee last night. If you are interested in being a part of a committee that takes a look at the foundational documents of our organization and helps to break things down through the legislation, we are still taking applications, which can be directed to Speaker Crow and I. We're looking for new members, so if anybody wants to join Tuesdays 5 to 6, if you have it open and you want to take another crack at the Constitution and look over some really cool bills coming down the line before they hit Senate, feel free to reach out at any point. You know where to reach me. So, besides that, if there are any other questions for me.
Does anyone have questions for the Internal Affairs Chair? All right. Seeing none, we will now move into the part of comment.
Hi everybody. So as you can imagine, it's been a very busy 2 weeks. So what I will say is I feel like I successfully caught us up so that we can just move forward linearly. So what I've done over the last 2 weeks, I've got a couple of highlights. So I've been working with funding student staff supervisor McConnell to grant various exceptions to tier 2s that fell under extenuating circumstances. So we've been meeting with them and this having a group discussion over what the extenuating circumstance was, and then we always catch up at the end and talk about how the funding policies can be changed moving forward, perhaps help the group. So the town hall will likely be the last week of October. I just got an email that said the date I requested had no rooms available. So I'm going to still look for the last week of October. The event will be called the WTF Forum, and that stands for What to Fix. So we're really going to try and market that to students on campus and hopefully captivate their attention with our lovely graphics that say WTF everywhere. So please spread the word. I will send out an email once I get the date. I am drafting an email to send out to all Tier 2 leaders anyway, and that will be included there. But I do ask for your help once the date is set. I'm also trying to negotiate a new car rental contract with Hertz, and the reason is Enterprise recently raised our rates because students have gotten into accidents using the vehicles that we have funded. So they raised our rates and they said they would not lower them until we could establish that the students that we fund moving forward are less likely to get into an accident. So I think it's better for us. There's a whole bunch of logistical issues with Enterprise anyway, because we were never informed that these accidents happen. So Enterprise just kind of like dropped it on us and said, we want you to do something about it, but this is years now, and we didn't know this happened. So I'm working with a regional manager for Hertz, and one of the things that I'm really hoping to accomplish, in addition to lowering, getting reduced rates compared to what we have in Enterprise right now, is to lower the car rental age for students to 18. Right now it's 21 with Enterprise, and I think we would just see a lot more, an increase in requests for car rentals if the age was lowered to 18, because the majority of students, undergrads at least on campus, are less than 21. I also met with Kimberly Miller today, and I have an answer for you on executive compensation. I just got this today, so I haven't shared this with everybody. Per the Department of Labor's decision, based on what Kimberly Miller passed on to them, the Department of Labor said that executive compensation was not, for the summer, back pay for the summer was not mandated per the law. So what I will say, it is you are totally eligible to amend the budget and authorize back pay. So now I will be working on compiling what that will cost us if you guys are interested. So I'd like to hear from you guys. Maybe we can have a discussion item on the agenda with like a straw poll, if you guys are willing to consider it, then I will compile all of the hours together and come up with a cost as to what that will cost the student government. I just want to remind you guys that there are people that were employed over the summer that expected to be paid. So, it's totally within your authority not to authorize back pay, but it's also within your authority to authorize it. So the Department of Labor says you do not have to per the law. So that's what I just wanted to pass on. So you're not required to, but you can choose to do so. What I will say is if you saw the overflow, USG has plenty of funds to do that. So I personally have no issues with the cost. It's just your decision. And I am working on funding policy revisions with various other senators and various G board members, governing board members. I'd like to special shout out to Chairperson Douglas, Speaker Crow, Senator Reynolds, the Operations and Risk Manager. Others have helped me. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see everybody. So to those of you that have assisted, great thanks. We're hoping that the policies that we move forward are really beneficial for the students at large. And some of those policies will hit the town hall at the end of October so that they can go into effect immediately. The policies that we'd like to move forward then are variances the Comptroller can issue and second chance funding. So if you have any questions, you can ask me. And then the SBAC budget, which is the Student Fee Advisory Committee, they are the ones that authorize the student fee for all Tier 3s that have them. I believe Tuba doesn't have one. So our student fee is $45 a semester. So it's the SBAC committee that authorizes us to continue charging that. So their budget was due yesterday from us, but obviously I haven't gotten the chance to do that. So it's basically due ASAP. So I will be working on that throughout the rest of this week and into next week, and they'd just like to see it before the beginning of November. A rough draft to our financial advisors, and then the big presentation is in February, from what I understand, and that's when I will present in conjunction with President Thacker why the $45 fee should remain, whether we should reduce it, whether we should increase it. That would be the time to do that. And various other things I've worked on, like drafting MOUs for events, but those are like minutiae bits. So that's it. Do we take questions now?
Yes.
Does anybody have questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was curious, who exactly in the executive branch needs back pay, with this?
I don't believe I could name specifically who for the law.
What sections of the executive?
I believe quite a few people clocked in hours of maintain timesheets over time. So does that answer your question?
Any further questions for the Comptroller?
Julio, thank you.
Now we'll move into report of the Vice President that shall be delivered by the
Hello everyone, Manny is sorry he couldn't be here. He's at Charter Oak attending a community meeting about the recent racism concerns. So we wrapped up orientation. We wanted to say thank you to everyone who made it out there. It was a great time, really good getting to know all the other senators. He's been coordinating office renovations. He's put together a group and is hoping to schedule a meeting for that this coming week. So if you're still interested in being involved, send him or myself an email. He's also been organizing the advisor group system. So he's been reading applications throughout the week and is starting to divide people up into their groups and is hoping to roll that out by the end of this week. And then he's also been working on planning the fall recruitment and retention event. A special shout out to Alex O's for all her hard work on that. The invitations should be coming out this week, so get excited. And yeah, that's all I have. Any questions?
We shall now move into the report of the Chief Justice.
All right, good evening, everyone. I have a very brief report. Applications for judiciary closed last night. So hopefully in a reasonable amount of time, we will have a full judiciary. And secondly, I would like to introduce my new Deputy Chief Justice, Dennis Mima. Dennis has been in this organization for a mind-boggling amount of time. He's been the chair of a subcommittee, the Mental Health and Wellness subcommittee last semester. He's definitely put a lot of work into this organization, and I am happy to have him by my side. I have any questions.
Any questions for the Chief Justice?
Have a good night.
Seeing none, we'll move to the report of the President delivered by their Chief.
Hello, everybody. So yeah, as Brady said, Priyanka and Manny are the president and the vice president are at the Charter Oak Community Center, where staff members and students are coming together to address the recent incidents, and the president and the vice president are looking to gather input to bring back to the Senate so we can decide the right course of action for us. As for the report, the president has been working on collaborating with RHA for town halls early in November and December. New York Times subscription in the works for next semester. We're not sure if it's going to be in the Times yet or another subscription service. Rec Center meeting soon to discuss updates of new procedures and possible policy changes. Met with the Cultural Center directors and hopeful for more participation with ex officios. Building relationships with other Tier 3s, UCTV, filming guests on bus, and updates with the campus. Working on food insecurity survey with student affairs. University Senate nominations will be presented today. Congratulations to those that were nominated. Collaborations with UConn Hartford and their USG. They came to the Husky Engage Summit that the External Affairs chairperson helped to organize. Collaborating with PERG and Chairperson Douglas again for buses to the polls on election day so we can get that 50%. Task force with Avalon and call to action next Wednesday. Y'all should check out the president and the vice president's video on YouTube. Meet USG president and vice president. Met with UConn Chief Police Reinhardt, and he's excited to collaborate. Don't hesitate to schedule meetings with the president or myself if you need help with legislation and or initiatives. State of the campus will be next Senate, but the current state is efficient. However, works need to be done in terms of students' need to be met. Actionable, tangible goals. Yeah, I'll take questions.
Any questions? With that, let's do my report. If I keep it brief. First, and arguably most importantly, the first Glassell game night of this semester will be next Friday, not this Friday, but next Friday. That is October 25th at 5 to 6:30, but you're welcome to stay longer than that. That's just like when the reservation will be, so get hyped for that. Senate leadership and I, first we've moved our meetings to Mondays now at either 6 or 8 o'clock. We haven't gotten a hard time on that yet, but we're working hard on that. We're also having conversations with the organization at large, and specifically the executive members of the organization, to ensure that point people and some committee chairs feel acknowledged and respected, as well as looking into further incentives that we could provide members of this organization to attend events. As in general, we've noticed that a lot of the events we've put on so far this year have been lowly attended. So we're looking into ways to deal with that. Couple of projects I'm working on. I had a very positive meeting with the Dean of Students today, discussing the Student Bill of Rights, which I mentioned to many of you over the course of the past couple weeks. Essentially what I'm attempting to do is codify some general things that USG will always defend regardless of what administration comes in, because we do have a lot of turnover in this organization, but there are some things that students should always be guaranteed regardless of who's in office. So over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be looking to bring a resolution to this before the Senate body, to create that committee, to have all of you on it, and hopefully members from outside the organization as well, to compile that document of guarantees before presenting it again to this body. Furthermore, and this actually ties a little bit into ex officio senators, we are finally going to make a push to break through the fact that ex officio senators have been non-voting members of the body for a very long time, and we're finally going to be looking into ways in in which we can grant those ex officio senators rights to vote. Now, that is going to require a constitutional amendment. I'm also looking into changing the way in which it will be done a little bit, whereas the organizations and members of those organizations will be guaranteed seats and just cut our internal process out of it entirely. There'd be no nomination and confirmation. For instance, the president of PERG will be guaranteed a seat, and they can either accept that seat themselves or delegate that to a member. That is how ex officio senators work in the real world, because as those of you who speak Latin may know, ex officio means by virtue of the office. So we'll be working on that, perhaps expanding the amount of ex officio senators so we can include some of the Greek councils, some transfer organizations, various organizations across campus. So I'll be working on that in the coming weeks. And also, as a quick update, not from me, from the funding student staff supervisor, she and I have agreed that every week, every 2 weeks at Senate, we will report the amount of money spent by the funding student staff. Right now, that number is $336,130.22. That's about a $45,000 increase from the last time we spoke about it. It was like $288,000. So, with that, I will yield. I will yield to questions. Are there any?
Should I always expect to go first? Because I was unprepared today.
Well, we mix it up. Depending on the weeks, we like to keep the committee chairs on their toes. Is there any other questions? Are there any other questions? All right, seeing none, I'm going to move back into the report of the Academic Affairs Chair and yield to Josh Ratina to give said report.
Hey everyone, so very quick report from Monty, Academic Affairs. So first thing, free print week is next week from the 21st to 25th. That means all Husky print printers with a max of 8 pages per student. Awesome initiative. The finals care packages will now be a finals care event in collaboration with Student Health Services. And there's been an ongoing discussion with the Director of Admissions and the Vice Provost regarding turning UConn into a test optional school. And I will not be taking questions for as Monty's not here.
In that case, thank you. All right. We are then done with reports, and we will move into old business. Seeing as there is no old business, we will move into new business. First on item in new business is a statement of position regarding library help. Do we have a motion? Motion goes to Knight, second goes to Howard. With that, is Matt McManus here? Please come up and present the legislation. Yeah, you can just go right there speaking to the mic. It should be off. You turn it on. You can take it out and walk around with it if you want. Turn it on. You have 5 minutes. I'll tap. I will tap this twice when you have a minute left, and 3 times when you have 30 seconds. Okay?
Well, thank you for having me, everyone. For those who don't know me, you probably know me does. My name is Matt McManus, and I'm a senior in the School of Nursing here at UConn. So I'm proposing this legislation in support of a public health initiative in Homer Babbage Library. So how this came to be really, is I was sitting in the library on like a Tuesday morning, and the table I was at was like really gross. And so it made me think is that if it's gross on like a Tuesday morning, like how much worse is it gonna get throughout the day? And it also made me realize that in my 4 years here at UConn, I've never actually seen cleaning staff clean any of the tables or other furniture. I've seen them clean like the bathrooms, I've seen them vacuum, but never actually like with like rags or wipes like wiping down any furniture. So what this legislation is like trying to accomplish physically is to get the addition of hand sanitizing stations, disposable wipes, and health literacy throughout the library, just promote public health in there and make it a lot cleaner for students to use. So there's two things I want to like leave you guys with. I'm not going to read through the whole legislation. The key points is that flu season runs from October to March, and that's like majority of the time we're in school. That passes through our fall midterms, fall finals, and spring midterms. And I mention those because usually midterms and finals are where students are most stressed, most sleep deprived, and that's where immune systems are most like at risk to get sick. And speaking of finals, whoever studies in the library during finals week knows it's like super busy. You can like never get a seat there. Whenever someone stands up, another person sits down. It's just a really high turnover. So you can only imagine like all like the bacteria and like spores on the library tables throughout the day and how no one's cleaning them because one, I've never seen cleaning staff clean them, and two, they're not going to clean them while students are using them. So basically it.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the author?
Thank you. So I was just curious, are you suggesting that the administration should like fund this, or would you like USG to fund this?
So we're planning on having a meeting with the Homer Babbage, like a provost advisory committee. So that's in the works, and from there, like, we assume they have a budget, but we haven't met with them yet to discuss it and how much the budget is. So that is like the initial like goal. But if not, Student Services Committee might possibly fund it. We just have to wait for that meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for the author? Seeing none, you may sit. We're going to move into discussion now. Is anyone left to, is there any discussion? Yeah, go ahead.
So I think this is a wonderful idea, and I'm fully in support of it. I would like to hear some discussion about how USG could suggest that we perhaps assist in the facilitating some sort of execution on this initiative. I don't believe that just leaving it open to Homer Babbage taking action would be the best option because there may be issues with that. I'm not particularly familiar with the situation regarding how the library operates internally. However, I have heard many times that they are in a state of restructuring, of rebuilding, and of reflection. So it might be beneficial, considering how important I believe this initiative to be, to amend it in some way to suggest the idea that USG can become more involved in how this is executed in the future.
Senator Collins?
So something that immediately came to mind is that I know there's a club that exists called the Homies Friends of the Library. I'm not sure if we could possibly bring this idea to them because I know that they're all about fixing the library and helping students like get the best out of it. So maybe that's something to consider with implementation.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of a statement of position regarding a public health initiative in Homer Babbage Library, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, the motion carries. Next thing is a motion regarding confirmation of individuals to University Senate and its committees. Do we have a motion? Can you, Diane, Senator Mang, and then Senator Chapman. Motion goes to Mang, second goes to Chapman. With that, I will invite the Presidential Chief of Staff up. Also, I took the liberty of putting all the nominations in a spreadsheet. It should be, I don't see it. Perhaps I messed it up, but I did create a spreadsheet that has all the names of the nominees in there. Give me a sec. Just so there's a reference for that as well, because all of them may not be here, and there are quite a few of them. So. Oh, perfect, it's up there. So great.
Cool. All right, hello folks. So thank you all for applying for University Senate. These are the nominees. Should they stand when I?
Yeah, and break it up by.
Yeah. So when I read your name, please stand. Can you go from the top? Thank you. For University Senate, the nominations are Dylan DeMora, Evelyn Nieves, Damani Douglas, Ethan Worsler, and Kulnor Saeed. Okay. For curriculum and courses, we have Michael Drew and Alejandro Rodriguez. Enrollment, Damon Reynolds and Catherine Morris. Growth and development, Jake Knowlton and Brandon Jones. Faculty standards, Dalton Howie and Stuart Allen. Student welfare, Delaruel Tarpe and Canoe Kablash. Canoe? Oh, where's Canoe? Scholastic standards, Srinithi Nair and Nia Moore. University budget, Michael Cerulli and Dylan Nenadal. Diversity, Evelyn Nieves and Maya Mararka. GEOC, our General Education and Oversight Committee, Neil Krishna. Yeah. Delta GE Task Force, Kylie Hillerud and Sunit Kate Hadi. And TAC, Transportation Advisory Committee, Ariane Naik. So these are our committee, these are our nominations for University Senate. We read through and anonymized all of the applicants, and these were the folks that we selected, and we think they're going to do a great job. All of these nominees, if confirmed by the consent of the Senate, will be reporting, or will be sending reports in to myself and the president. And I think that they will all represent the needs of students first, and I respect them greatly.
Okay, before we go on, do all the nominees accept their nominations?
Yep.
Yes. Okay, and does the presidential chief of staff accept on those?
I sure do.
All right. With that, we're going to move into discussion. Well, first we'll move into questions. Does anyone have any questions? That can be what these committees do. That can be what do specific individuals want to do. Things like that. Go ahead, Liz.
So the Delta GE Task Force is a committee under GEOC, and from what I understand, they are so the Delta GE Task Force is a subcommittee of the General Education and Oversight Committee. And what Delta GE does, I'm fairly certain they essentially run an analysis on the gen eds. That's what I believe. Honestly, I'm not sure. But yeah.
Are there further questions?
So there are several committees that were listed on the University Committee's description in Times that have no nominees appointed to them on here. Can you explain?
Which ones? I believe it's just the community action task force or community.
Yeah, the community resource team and the Scholastic Standards.
Scholastic Standards is right there. Cool. Yes, it's the community response team, right? Yes. So the Dean of Students asked for the president to nominate one student athlete and another and a representative from another specific community on campus. And so because no one who applied met those requirements, we're going to try to continue to look to fulfill what the Dean of Students asked for. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. I'm sorry I don't know the other one off the top of my head. I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Until the end of the academic year.
Yeah, what's up?
Procedurally, how are we going to do this? Are we going to...
Yeah, so usually these would all be broken up into like specific motions. I bound them all together in one because there was a lot to do tonight. If you guys would prefer, I will split the motion on the basis of each of the individual committees. So we'll approve University Senate first, and then so on and so on. That is a lot. There is a potential intermediate option between those where we separate University Senate from its committees, which is like a more, another potential break we could make rather than breaking it down by each separate committee, because that could take quite a while. But what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, if everybody else is cool with moving with it as a whole, that's fine. I would prefer to have a breakdown just so we can sequence each, give every nominee the chance that they're in the spotlight. Otherwise, like for any other nomination, you know, when we're nominating one or two people, we give a chance to recognize them. I want to make sure that we're going through being substantive and not just sending.
Yeah.
Okay. There are a lot of people who deserve their position.
Okay, that's fair. What if the way we handled that was potentially like having every nominee who's here talk a little bit about what they want to do on their respective committees? Could that help? Go ahead.
We could just do it on a basis of which nominees want to speak, because they may not all have something prepared.
Okay, that's fair. Is that acceptable? Okay. All right, so we'll start off with University Senate. Dylan Demora, you want to talk a little bit about it? You can speak from where you are too if you want. You don't have to.
Use the mic just because it's been a while. Hey, I've been on University Senate since my freshman year. I have some good connections to a lot of professors that are on there. I know how it works. I'm willing to put in work to represent students again this year, and excited for this year at University Senate.
Is not here. Mine Douglas.
Good.
All right. Ethan Worsley.
I served on the committee last year, University Senate. Thank you to the president for granting me the opportunity to do that again. And Walter, of course, again. And I'm looking forward to representing USG in the undergraduate student body again. Thank you.
Eleanor. Yeah. Michael Zoot. No. Alejandro Rodriguez.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alejandro Rodriguez. So I'd be working on the Courses and Curriculum Committee. One of the reasons I definitely wanted to join this committee was specifically because I'm a transfer student. And so a lot of the credits, in terms of general credits that I'd be working with within the committee, a lot of my credits weren't transferred, and so I want to be a part of that process of understanding how gen eds work and how they relate to other schools, and so that's why I definitely want to work on this committee. Thank you.
David Reynolds?
Yeah, just really quickly, as a current member and a senator on academic affairs, I want to, bridge the gap and work with administration and talk about some of our plans for, optional testing with SATs and admission standards. Especially, I look forward to working on evaluating our admission standards when it comes to, representation of LGBTQ community, other underrepresented communities, and gathering data of that for when they come on campus. And I look forward to working with Kat Morris to get that done.
Captain Morris. So Jake Dalton. All right. Dalton Howard.
I'm set.
Stuart Allen.
Hi everyone. Really privileged to be nominated for this position. If I get confirmed to it, I think that one of the big things I'm going to push for is going after attendance-based grading, since obviously even though there are rules on the books about it, a lot of professors, as we all know, have not quite gotten the memo. So I think we need to continue to make progress in that area.
Yeah, I want to thank the president's chief of staff and the team for the honor of nominating me. Thank the Senate for considering this. The budget committee is a really important one, and I hope that I'll be able to bring transparency, integrity, and honesty. So if any of you have any questions about the proceedings that go on there, I'll be providing the chief of staff and the president with a thorough report. If any senators have any questions about those processes, what's going on in that committee, I'm more than happy to communicate with all of you, and I'm looking forward to a good year. Thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm Dylan. I'm lucky to be going into my fourth year representing the undergraduate body on the University Budget Committee. I look forward to introducing Michael, who's a member on the committee. And it's a really unique experience being on the University Budget Committee. I imagine that you'll be hearing about stuff that's going on at that level at some point this year. So our reports are really important this year. And yeah, thank you.
Neil?
Hello everyone, thank you for this honor nominating me. I'm the representative for General Education Oversight, and I just want to say I'm excited to represent our peers as we continue to reshape and restructure our gen ed throughout the university.
Hi folks, if you don't know me, my name is Kylie Hilbert. I am a junior digital media design major. Specifically, I want to join this task force because they are thinking about adding fine arts to gen ed. So I want to bring about my perspective in that program to the task force and talk about that. So yeah.
Hey guys, Sweet Katie, Senator from Buckley Shippey. Also honored to be nominated. So thank you, President, staff, and everybody. Building on it, I want to get involved with the addition of the fine arts. One of the initiatives we're thinking of doing is adding the fine arts and eliminating the diversity multicultural content area. So I just want to see, what the reasoning is behind that. See just the structure, overall structure of the gen ed curriculum.
Does anyone have any questions following that? Any more discussion? Yeah, go ahead.
How are we gonna do this?
Okay, so I'm still at this time inclined to have a single vote. If somebody would like to split the vote, I would accept that motion, of course.
So I was curious, so with a lot of these committees, I see there's like 2 people, 1 people nominated. Is there going to be more nominations for those committees?
So the committees that are filled out in 2s, well, actually all these committees are full for the student representatives. Yeah, except for the community response team, and the other was represented from the cultural centers. So these are full.
Yeah, go. As far as I know, they are open to the public, but I'm going to yield to the president. These meetings are open to the public.
Yes, unless they go into executive session for any reason, which they often do. But yeah.
Further questions, discussion, motions? Go ahead.
So I'd like the motion to divide the question at each individual nomination.
Okay, there is a motion to divide the question. At this time, nominees, you can sit down. At this time, there is a motion to split the question along each University Senate courses, curricula, et cetera, et cetera. Is there a second to that motion?
I want to clarify my motion. I meant each individual nominee, not each committee.
Okay, so you would like to have a motion for
Yes.
each person? Okay. Is there a second to that motion? All right. We will have a brief discussion. I will bring the author up if somebody would like to speak.
Yeah. Is it a simple majority for these nominations?
The simple majority, it requires a 2/3 majority for each nominee, or if we approve them all at once, a 2/3 majority. But the vote to split the question, I believe, is just a simple majority. But with that, I'll invite the proposer of the motion.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to do this because I thought it was important. Oh, did I turn it off? I think so. I just wanted to do this because I thought it was important that the Senate maintains its approval power in this particular regard, and I also think that it's very important that we give each individual nominee the appropriate attention. So for that reason, I think that it's most appropriate to do it this way. If you guys don't want to, that's fine, but this is just what I believe. Thank you very much.
I'm going to yield to Senator Whistler and then Deputy Speaker Whistler, excuse me, and then
Okay. No, we're good. So bear with me. I do have light fever right now, so man, if I say something strange, just let me do it. One thing I will say is that I'm voting against this amendment. Here's why. USG often wastes time to bureaucratic things that don't have any value to the students. And I think that for the sake of brevity, for the sake of the important stuff, we should go and do that stuff. And I can't think of a single presidential nomination that hasn't passed unanimously. So I think it's really just a formality to wait at this point. That's all this.
With that, I'm going to you up and then Chairperson Frank, and I'm going to cap the list one with
I think in the
sense that we should give each individual nominee their own time and the appropriate attention. I think that we just did that by going around and asking them to tell about exactly what they wish to do, and a lot of them decided not to. So, that's all.
Chairperson Frank?
I think that when we are considering the nominations of people that are going to represent the students, I tend to disagree with Deputy Speaker Wursler's position on that. I think that it's important that given these nominations, in any other circumstance besides the number that we see here, they would be given their own space to speak. I think it's important, their own space to speak and their own space to be voted on. I would feel the most comfortable as a voting member of this body, in this case and in any other, for a foundation as integral to student representation as University Senate and subsequent committees, that we give every member who is going up there the adequate consideration for their own merits, of which in any other case we would do.
Thank you. With that, we'll now move to a vote. As a reminder, this requires a simple majority to pass. All those in favor of dividing the question on each individual, that is, we will vote to approve each individual person, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, please signify by saying nay. Nay. All right, all of those in favor, please the lobby. All those in favor, please stand. They can if they so choose. It's not mandatory. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13. All those opposed to the motion, please stand. All abstentions? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And one from the chair. And a vote of 13 to 23 to 5, the motion fails. With that, we'll move back to consideration on the motion. Are there any further motions or discussion? Seeing none, we will move into a vote. All those in favor of approving the nominees to University Senate and its committees, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? One from each of the nominees, and then one from Frank and Chairperson Frank and the motion. And you abstain? And with that, the motion clearly passes. Congratulations. With that, we will now move into a motion regarding, bill regarding the office of the speaker. Do we have a motion? Motion goes to me. What's the last name? I'm at this time going to step down and give the chair to my deputy speaker to present the. So can you bring up the document? It's called Office of Speaker Edit. The bill is just saying that it's not. Hey everyone. So I have been talking about reforming the Office of the Speaker bylaw since the beginning of the semester, and so here is that reformation. Doesn't change too much. It expands the scope of, let's say, coordinator a little more specifically, going into their role regarding advocacy. It adds Sean and Noah's position as voting members of Senate leadership. It also allows me to only nominate and have confirmed one deputy speaker, because there really shouldn't be more than one deputy speaker, in my opinion. It details the powers and responsibilities of the office. Most of those are just the same. That is, we have to train you guys, we have to curate the rules of the Senate. We have to, if you guys are not following the rules or not attending, dismiss you guys to the proper channels. I have to maintain a line of succession. If I step down from the chair or I'm indisposed, that often goes to my deputy, as you well know. And then the final item is just the office of Speaker shall have the right to disperse money in Senate's budget specifically. So that is, if there's a line item for game night, Senate leadership gets to disperse that money for it. I'm going to yield questions at this time.
Are there questions? And real quick, sorry, if you're we're just confirmed, just nominated, you're welcome to leave. We'd love to have you stay, but you're welcome to leave at this point in time. Yeah, if you want to. Okay. Are there any questions? Senator Reynolds.
When I think this is a good change when it comes to the internal operations, do you see this as having any tangible benefit to the student body as at large and how we operate as an organization?
Yeah, so actually I do, because I think that when you look back at like our freshman year, for example, and there was not really an existing Senate leadership, the Senate body suffered and there was a lot of attrition. We lost a lot of senators, and obviously that's very negative when it comes to the impact on the student body, because the less of you we have here advocating for these types of issues that affect the Senate body, that's like a very direct problem. And I think that absolutely, like though some of these are some minor edits, it does absolutely pertain to making sure that all of you remain in this body and this body as a whole remains healthy.
Okay. Any questions?
In terms of Senate oversight, when you are dispersing the money for the Senate, does the Senate vote on that disbursement?
So the way it works is the same way, like it basically designates Senate leadership as like the committee version of the Senate. And what I mean by that is like we don't have the authority to disperse all the money in the budget, just simply that money under that line. If Senate does not like the way we're dispersing that money, one, I would suggest they remove us. Or two, something a little less extreme would be they can choose to disperse the money in a different way, as they can with any committee, because Senate has the ultimate oversight, not just of where money is allocated, but how it ends up actually being used.
Can you provide an example, even if it's hypothetical, as to why the office of the Speaker would disperse money on behalf of the Senate?
I don't even need to provide a hypothetical, and I can give a specific example. Last week when we dispersed money on behalf of the Senate, when it came to game night. When I say, like, I would be open to amendment to like change around the wording, but what I meant by that is it shall have, the Senate leadership shall have, or rather the office of the Speaker shall have the authority to disperse the money only specifically under Senate's budget. So that's like the line item in the budget that has money for placards, that has money for game night, and that sort of thing. Senate has the option to disperse that, but I personally believe it would be rather dilatory to come to you all every single time we need money for something like game night. It would get in the way of more pressing issues. So I think that that's absolutely within something reasonable to delegate to those that you elect or confirm.
Any other questions?
How does dispersal work now?
This is actually the way it works already. This is in our standing rules. I'm just upgrading it to the bylaws because I think it's a power relation.
Yes, as per the current budget, there is no Senate budget. There's a budget for the office of the Speaker. So that's allowing Senate leadership to approve money out of a pool that does not exist. So let's put that out there. As a question.
Yes. I would be very receptive, and in fact make a motion myself to address that concern, because that is not what I want. Would you have any idea on how to word that?
I have no power.
All right, but if you give me a suggestion, I will make the motion myself. There was no.
Okay, all right. You know what that was? Back and forth. So, are there any other questions? Yes. We'll move on to discussion. We can get amendments proposed here. Okay. No more questions. Okay. Seeing as there's no more questions, move into discussion. Mr. Speaker. Are there any points of discussion at this point in time? Yes, Senator.
I'd like to motion to amend clause E, it's 7E, from, on behalf of the student senate, if it resides within the student senate's budget, office of the speaker's budget instead of student senate's budget. I believe that will alleviate Chairperson Douglas's concern. I want, instead of within student senate's budget, the office of the speaker's budget. What? Sorry.
I guess we'll wait as the signature.
Oh, yes, strike the amendment. I understand.
Okay. So, amendment is stricken. Are there any points of discussion on this motion?
I'm going to motion to strike the whole clause by unanimous consent. The idea, of course, being behind that of course the office of the speaker would have control over its own budget. Who else would it be? I'm going to motion to do that by unanimous consent.
Do we have a second?
That does not.
Okay. Are there any objections to this motion? Okay. Seeing none, this motion is passed. Okay. It's stricken from the budget. Yeah. Not from the budget. From the law. Not law. Okay. Yeah. Anything else here, folks? Any other points of discussion? Okay. Okay. Seeing none, we will now move into a vote. All those in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Are there any abstentions? Seeing none, the ayes clearly have it. This motion carries.
So with that, I will resume the chair. My deputy, appreciate it as always. Now we will move into a bylaw cleanup act : committees. Is there a motion? Motion goes to Collins. Second goes to Mosley. I will invite the author of the legislation.
All right, I'll keep my explanation brief here. The goal here, this is the first of a series of bills that I will hopefully bring before the Senate. The goal here is to increase readability of our bylaws, both to members of the undergraduate student government and our constituents. I don't think that you should have to be in USG to understand its bylaws. I think that that's kind of prohibitive to anyone who wants to understand the way USG works. So that's the goal of this amendment here. It essentially does, it's in 3 parts. Can we scroll to the first one? Yeah, there we go. The first one is about the powers of committees in general. It talks about what subcommittees are, what powers they have, what vice chairs are, how they end up being appointed, what standing rules are, and why they are necessary. Can we scroll down further? Anything highlighted is new. Scroll to the next one. So first, or second, calls out the primary standing committees. Those are the ones that you all are assigned to. This is simply a relocation. Almost all of this is verbatim from the current bylaws, rewritten into a way that is easier to read than the current bylaws. Like I said before, there's been minimal language changes, and those that exist are not substantive changes. Can we scroll to the next one? This locates all the secondary committees together. That's right now just recess and nominations, puts them all in the same place, presumably making them easier to find, seeing as nominations is somewhere in the middle and recess immediately follows the 4 standing committees. Yeah, so that's that. I'll yield to questions.
Any questions for the author? Seeing none, we'll move into discussion. Any discussion on this? Chairperson Pratt.
Hello again, everybody. This is not Okay. Okay. So I just want to take the time very quickly to, first of all, I want to take the time to make sure that Damani gets, Chairperson Douglas gets due recognition for all of his hard work. I think this does a great job of breaking down and sequencing how our committees are going to work. I feel like it does a good job summarizing and putting together many integral facets of our organization, and I think it does make it significantly readable. This is why, from a very fruitful conversation last night in Internal Affairs decided to sponsor this bill with a couple of amendments that are noteworthy. So first of all, as elicited in Bylaw 2, subclause C, the committee chair shall have the power to supervise, overrule, remove, or replace vice chairs. That was one of our big talking points: vice chairs versus subcommittees. How are those dynamics going to work? We came to the determination that vice chairs, due to their relationship to the chair versus the committee or the idea that they're working on as a whole, should fall under that certain discretion. And we removed the previous standing power of the president, vice president, comptroller, and speaker to serve as ex officio voting members on committees, given their relative checks and organization at other steps in the legislative process. So furthermore, again, I would like to commend Chairperson Douglas for doing a great job with this. I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I'm sure the Internal Affairs Committee shares the same sentiments. So yeah.
Just comment.
Sorry, I'd just like to issue a quick correction. To my understanding, only the Speaker of the Senate had that power before, and it was going to be expanded to other members
That's
of
right.
the governing board. I just wanted to make that clear for everyone before we go forward.
An additional correction to that, not other members, just the president, extending that power from solely that of the speaker to the president as well. And that is the power to vote in all of the standing committees. So that's Act Affairs, Student Development, External Affairs, and Student Services. That's what that is.
Yes, that's what that is.
And as a procedural note, that is no longer in the legislation.
That is no longer in the legislation.
I just wanted to make that abundantly clear. I believe I was getting confused. Is there any other discussion on this piece of legislation?
When it comes to 4C, I understand the changes we made in the past meant that the committee had to vote and approve nominations of vice chairs. Would the committee have to vote and approve the removal and replacement of them, or is it just the committee chair has unilateral power to make these changes?
The second. The reason being someone like a subcommittee chair is charged with their own charter, as described by whoever created that committee. I'll take the mental health subcommittee as an example. That has its own huge area that is mental health, whereas the vice chair of town affairs in an external is a direct extension of that chairperson, right? It's helping them to complete their duties as opposed to having their own charter. So that's the reason for that.
Is that a motion?
Yes. I'd like to motion to strike or replace from 4C, seeing as it contradicts 4.
All right, so 4C, you want
Just get rid of the 2 words or replace.
oral. That's your amendment?
Yeah.
Is there a second to that amendment? Second to Chairperson Frank is taken as friendly. All right, so ruled. Any other motions? Motion.
I'd like it to say or before the word removed.
Grammatical.
Yeah, we have the power to change that here, so we'll take care of it. Thank you. Are there any other motions? Which one? Just go over. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to amend 5B. I'd like to strike chair of the 70 sponsoring committee.
Is there a second to this motion? Second goes to, was the statement friendly?
I like to hear the reason.
All right, elaborate.
So no.
Yes, I will allow the author to speak.
Sure. So this is just basically about like democratizing the process. I don't think that one committee chair should be able to overrule the actions or recommendations of a subcommittee. I think if there are concerns about a subcommittee doing something, I don't know, outside the scope of its jurisdiction, then I don't know. I think restrictions should be put in place when the subcommittee is authorized. I don't think that a chairman should be able to rule it after the fact. I think that's going to happen. It should be the committee.
Are there other people who would like to speak? Douglas.
Yeah, so I take your point. The idea being this: if a particular event or initiative is to go south for whatever reason, the repercussions for that will roll back on the chair of the committee and likely the president of USG. So I would feel more comfortable, instead of striking that, perhaps adding a clause that allows it to be appealed to the committee. Because it's not, should that situation occur, right, the potential is that that situation would not be able to be addressed for a full week until the sponsoring committee meets again. So that's kind of my idea behind that. So I think that if you want to create a bit of a check, I think you should do it with a vote of the committee to overturn the decision of the chair of the sponsor committee, as opposed to taking the power away from the chair.
Would you be comfortable with that? All right, well, technically it's a little bit of a violation of the rules, but I'll accept it. Can we just change the amendment to read that the committee shall have the option to overturn the decision? Yeah, just add a subclause saying the committee shall have the option to overturn the decision of the chair.
I guess do it as like a subclause.
Yeah, it is what it is. By a 2/3 majority vote. Suppose we'll just move into a vote on this. All those in favor of, well, the chair adopts it as friendly, or the author adopts it as friendly. So it just is. All right, cool. All right, is there any further discussion on the legislation as a whole? Krishna, do you want to be called out? No. Pointing the placard. Senator Reynolds.
If I could ask a question to the author, what would your thoughts be of also including that same subsection under 4C? Or does that already exist?
Yeah, I would. I have no particular opposition to it. I would not take it as friendly. I think that the idea here is because vice chairs are generally an extension of the chair themselves. That's not really something that we should hash out in front of the committee. In internal, we talked about something similar, and I said that if a chairperson has lost confidence in the ability of their vice chair to do their job, then they will stop assigning them work, which means that they would simply be holding the position, preventing someone else from being nominated to it, and not contributing anything to the committee or the students. So the idea there was to kind of allow the chair of the sponsoring committee their own autonomy in their support staff, similarly to how the president has that kind of autonomy over the cabinet, or the speaker over his office.
I will also go so far as to say in general that while checks and balances are important, it's also like there is a greater check here as well. If the chair of the committee is abusing their authority and rightfully, in the opinion of the Senate, terminating vice chairs, the committee and the Senate on the whole can take action.
Can I make a motion to add that same subclause to 4C?
Of course. You scroll to 4C, just copy B1 and put it under 4C. So that one there, the one they'll be able to overrule, put it in 4C. Is there a second to that motion? Seeing as there is no second, the motion With that, we will move back into consideration on the legislation on the whole. Is there any further discussion or amendments to this? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of the legislation before us, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, motion carries. All right. Now we'll move into item E on the agenda, which is compensation update, Deputy Comptrollers and Inventory Director. Is there a motion? Motion by Collins. Is there a second? Second by Pratt.
If the chair would smile upon it, can we move all three of the amendments that are currently on the docket before we move into introducing it?
Yeah, so. You can just.
Second vote on the, yes.
He has to be the one to approve it.
No, I just did.
Oh, cool. All right. So here's the idea here. Currently, within the compensation bylaw, it says that if a position is outlined within the governing documents, then someone can be compensated to do it. Both of these two positions are. So I want to make that immensely clear that we are not creating a new position with this with this bylaw here. What we are doing is we are creating a position description for them. Currently, the Director of Inventory is defined within the USG internal financial operating policies and procedures. You can find that on the USG website in the governing docs tab. It's one of the 5 of them. And then the Deputy Comptroller is alluded to or created within the Executive Cabinet bylaw. I believe it is the final clause of that bylaw. Our idea here is to spell out clearly, both for the sake of oversight and the sake of those individuals who will be applying to these positions, what exactly their duties will entail. So first, for the deputy, actually, I have the comptroller with me, so I'll let him speak.
Okay, so the idea here is USG has to conduct an inventory. It should have been conducted, no fault to previous comptrollers, I want to make that clear, but it should have been conducted several years ago. We haven't done an inventory in many years now. We risk being persecuted by the state, Connecticut, because as a trustee organization, we are considered a state organization, so we could be penalized for not having conducted an inventory. What that penalty would be, I can't say. What I can say is it could be a fine, it could be shutting us down. In the most extreme case, it could be preventing us from purchasing new inventory. So what I'd like to do is have 2 deputy comptrollers and a director of inventory on board to conduct this inventory. It's going to be an extensive process because we would have to reach out to every tier 2, look through every record that we have, every financial record, and basically compile a list of everything we've purchased. And reach out to the tier 2s and say, hey, do you still have this? Can you tell us where it is? What's the condition? All those things. That I would need the help of the 2 deputy comptrollers and the director of inventory. Moving forward, I'd like to institute a barcode system. This is still up in the air, but essentially the director of inventory would be charged with maintaining the inventory in the future. So when tier 2s buy new equipment, the director of inventory will assign them that barcode, will be the main organizer of that, and basically ensure that anytime we have to conduct a mass inventory audit in the future, that we're not playing catch-up. The deputy comptrollers, once the inventory is finished, I am inclined to drop one. I feel inclined to drop a deputy comptroller, so 1 deputy comptroller will be hired with the intention of not continuing their position for the duration of the entire spring semester. They would be dropped. The reason why I would have 2 on, aside from having them help out with the inventory, would be to go through informational budgets, which is also an intensive process. Right now, the informational budgets are really not used at all, and that's because there's nobody to go through them. Each tier 2 organization submits an informational budget every semester. What I will say is that the ones that we received at the end of the spring for this fall, really nobody looked at, and I feel that they could be useful. if they're looked at carefully. So that's the idea here, is that the deputy comptrollers would be able to assist with other comptroller duties, whereas the director of inventory would be specifically tasked with maintaining an inventory once we complete the official one, the initial one.
Yeah, just to actually add a little bit of context here, we have had people previously in both of these positions. Last year, in the spring semester, then the then comptroller, now president, had brought someone on to do inventory. We were going to go look at that person again, but he graduated. She relayed to us that he was immensely helpful in getting that process started, and that for the amount and type of work, the level of tedium that is included here, no one would do that work for her. So that's what that was.
All right. With that, I presume you'll get questions.
Oh, yeah.
Can I say one last thing?
Yeah.
The reason why we're bringing this forward to compensate these positions is because one of the main things that our financial advisors ask us to consider when compensating a position is, would somebody do this work for free? And I have come, after I got into this role, I came to the decision that nobody will look through 300 plus informational budgets and conduct statistics on them and compile data from them for free. Secondly, I don't think anybody is going to be willing to conduct an inventory, reaching out to every tier 2 about every item that USG has on record, having purchased for them for free. So I just wanted to say that last piece. Okay.
All right. Questions? All right. 1, 2, 3. Steve,
All right. I do believe this is an important update, compensation rules. I do have a question.
Yes.
How would you work to maintain accountability and honesty when it comes to compensation hours?
So I think that they would fall under, so I'm open to something being passed to say that the deputy comptrollers, that their timesheets are checked by the Chief Justice. I don't know if that would happen automatically or if they would fall under me, but I do see why a comptroller in the future may not be very honest with their deputies, especially if they hired friends or something, which isn't supposed to happen. I won't do that for the future. I'm amenable to that, so that I would say increases accountability. But the other thing is they will have to find office hours and hours worked per week that I would not expect them to exceed, especially because there would be 2 or 3 of them at any given time working on the same project, including the director of inventory. So if we're conducting an inventory and the deputy comptroller's hours are limited to 10 hours a week, they shouldn't be going over 10 hours a week because they have another deputy and a director of inventory all working on it.
So I just had a quick sidebar with the Chief Justice there. He would be receptive to such an amendment, and I think that if we move forward here, we can have that for next Senate before those members are brought on. To be clear, what I'm referring to here is that the Chief Justice would approve the timesheets of the direct reports to the Comptroller.
next on the list is Senator Allen.
So I noticed in the legislation you didn't specify what payment class the deputy comptroller and the inventory director should fall under. Is that a deliberate decision, or would that be something you'd be open to talking about?
Yeah, so if you'll take a look at that bylaw, no payment classes are currently specified. This was a mark of parallelism. There are payment classes specified for specific members of the, or specific executives specified within the bylaw preceding this one. Seeing as the roles created here don't fall under that category, we did not amend that bylaw to include those payment classes. If you'd like to speak to where you think they should be brought on.
Yes, so the deputy comptrollers, we were saying, should be class 2, which is considered assistant. So do we know who else is class 2? The comparison?
Yeah, so that would be the same class as the majority of the funding staff. And the chief of staff.
And the director of inventory, we said.
Director of inventory in the same class.
Chief of Staff Dodson.
Yeah, so I think I thank the Comptroller for pointing this out. If we get audited and we don't have this, we are in trouble. But my question is for y'all, is for the two of you, but also for the Chief Justice. I know we just chatted about this a little bit, but I just want to be clear. So you referenced the Executive Cabinet. So does that mean that the Deputy Comptroller will then become a part of the Cabinet, or will they be an appointee of the Comptroller to be deemed entrance to the Cabinet by the President?
So, while I think it is written poorly, the current bylaw as it stands says that deputy comptrollers are members of the Executive Cabinet appointed by the President, confirmed by 2/3 of the Senate. That's what that is.
Okay. Okay, so then any deputy comptroller would have to be appointed by, nominated by the President, approved by the Senate.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Senator Howie?
I never read my to speak.
Okay. That's
I appreciate the opportunity.
So I would just like to ask why this is necessary, considering the way that the bylaws are already outlined. Technically, we could already compensate the Deputy Comptroller, and considering the fact that members of the Executive Cabinet do not have outlined actions and duties in this bylaw, why are we doing this for the Deputy Comptroller and the Inventory Director?
Sure. Transparency. I'm here for transparency. It's one of the things I promised everybody. So while it may not be parallel to other members of the Executive Cabinet or other people outlined in the bylaws, I felt in conjunction with Chairperson Douglas, that it would be important to explain to the public, to the Senate, why we were choosing to compensate deputy comptrollers. And therefore, we outlined their specific duties, and we threw in the Director of Inventory here, just so that it's clear, so that somebody doesn't have to go digging through the funding policies to find that the Director of Inventory is compensated. Does that answer your question?
More or less.
With that, Senator Vaughn.
So my question is more like a constitutional question. I was just curious. So if any person in the Senate or the judicial got appointed to this position, would they have to give up those seats? Because it's executive.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have constitutional requirements that say you can only be a member of one branch at a time, unless you're a chairperson. And I don't plan on applying. And I don't think that any of the other chair people would. I would also argue that that exception would not apply to the chairs in that instance. So yes, they would have to forfeit whatever the previous position was.
And I just want to add that these positions, if you guys approve compensation for them tonight, they will be posted on JobX and open to the public. So to avoid nepotism, obviously, to be transparent, these jobs will be posted and anybody will be available to apply, and I will likely conduct an interview process in conjunction with President Thacker to go through the candidates.
Chairperson Frank, and it's the Chief Justice, and I'm inclined to cap the speakers list because we're supposed to be done by 8:15. There's a lot more to go, so.
So first and foremost, I'll just say that internals did sponsor this bill, so that we could get it to Senate, because we felt that everything in the bill worked out. But I guess I want to ask a greater question. So the reasoning why you gave fundamentally for the deputy comptroller to be a paid position is because nobody would do that kind of work for free, right? Are any other deputies compensated? Like, is that a thing across the board? Because if that's that might open a bigger conversation for me, where I don't want to set a different precedent for like deputy comptroller versus deputy speaker, for example. I'm not trying to call it that position in particular, but just any deputies across the board. If we're going to compensate this, why are we not therefore compensating you?
You are absolutely correct. As of, we're assuming, well, not as of passage, but as of right now, those would be the only deputies, along with the Director of Inventory would be compensated.
Okay, I guess then I'll just posit that as a bigger question for the committee if we want to approve approve compensation for one deputy when it makes some things, they're just, other deputies are not getting compensated for that work. It's just something to think about.
I will also take a moment before I yield to Chief Justice Moore to mention the fact that I personally believe that can of worms opened as soon as we started paying members of the executive cabinet. So I'll do that to Chief Justice Moore.
This is a question for the authors. In 1C, managing and recording inventory, is that in reference to internal inventory as opposed to 2B, which would be tier 2 inventory?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Okay. If those
Would if Deputy Comptroller has begun managing or assisting with the management of Tier 2 inventory, if they were directed so by the Comptroller to do so, would that be in accordance with the bylaws?
It would be under 1D. I will say that if their function in 1C is meant to talk about internal USG inventory, then adding words that describe that might reduce any sort of conflict, as in you're compensating a deputy comptroller for doing something that you are also compensating an inventory director to do.
My only response to that would be to say that in the current policies, that is the financial USG internal financial operating procedures or policies and procedures. Currently, they designate the comptroller as the controller of all inventory, and designate the inventory director specifically to work with the tier 2s. As we kind of mentioned before in the description of having to do a whole wide inventory, it makes sense to expand the comptroller's powers there, or not expand the powers, but to delegate some of those powers to the deputy comptrollers to help complete some of those tasks.
I don't see a problem with that. I would just personally like to see something in 1C that describes the type of inventory, so you don't have. But I cannot motion as such, so that's just a suggestion.
We would smile upon an amendment that would be to 1C, so that clause would read, managing and recording internal and external inventory.
That's done. Sorry, I promise I'll get you back.
You got really excited with that.
It's just all right. With that, we're going to move into a vote because the speakers list is capped.
Is that the speakers list, or is that the list for questions on the presentation?
That's both. So right now, I've actually combined both questions and discussion. That being said, if there was a misunderstanding there, I will not move into a vote and allow some discussion. Is there any discussion?
I just wanted to say that I approve very much of this amendment to the Constitution. I believe that we should definitely compensate our financial staff, whether they be under the comptroller directly or in other parts of the executive branch. And I'd like to say gratitude for Fabio and everyone who helped with this. And I hope it passes.
Thank you.
Senator Toscano.
I'd just like to briefly speak against this compensation update. I'm under the impression that it is entirely unnecessary, and I'm not a big fan of unnecessary governing document legislation. Based on both of the D clauses, it's essentially just doing the same thing that it would do otherwise. It's open up to any duty as directed by the comptroller, which foreseeably the 3 other duties above it would be. It's entirely redundant. It can already be done by the governing documents, and I encourage the Senate to vote on it. Thank you.
All right. Is there any further discussion?
I'd just like to ask, I guess, I feel like these positions, even though there is some similarities, I think the inventory director, there's a very clear need for it. I guess, is there a reason you decided to do this all in one as opposed to 2 separate, like one thing regarding the deputies and one regarding the inventory?
Yeah, so that's really the current mountain of the inventory. Going forward, as the comptroller noted, it does not intend on keeping on both deputy comptrollers, and that would be communicated to them during the hiring process. But that's the 2 at the beginning is because they just the size of the inventory, as the comptroller mentioned, reaching out to all tier 2s and searching all inventory that she's ever purchased.
All right, with that, I'm inclined end discussion and thank you both. This legislation, as it is a bylaw amendment, not a constitution, it's like, but a bylaw amendment requires a 2/3 majority. All those in favor of the legislation, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, the motion carries. Next on the agenda, we have a resolution regarding updated Senate standing rules. Before I go on, I'd like to, once we finish this, do everything else by either consent or table it. So make sure you have read it, because if you haven't and it's done and then you have complaints about it later, I'm not going to be super resentful of that. But is there a motion for a resolution regarding Senate standing rules? Motion goes to Collins, and then the second goes to McNamee. All right, I'm going to step down and turn this chair over to my deputy speaker to present this legislation as well. I promise it will be very quick. Can you scroll down? There are highlighted portions. Most of this stuff is just nice, feel-good stuff. Last year we had our minute taker was designated the clerk of the Senate. So I would like our minute taker this year, Lee, to also be dedicated the clerk of the Senate. Just give them the ability to speak, which they already kind of have, but I want to codify that. It also has a new change, which is something called the Dean of the Senate. For those of you who don't know, the Dean of the House of Representatives and the Dean of the Senate in real life is generally the oldest serving member. One of the oldest serving members in our body, who is also has the least amount of responsibilities currently, is Steve Tiberio. So I would like to designate him as the Dean of the Undergraduate Student Government Senate. For all pieces of legislation, all pieces of legislation shall require a member of the legislative branch as an author. That's senators, ex officio senators, and chair people. This is just so we can make sure that legislation that comes before this body is generally has somebody who has knowledge of that. The legislative coordinator and I are both duty bound to assist anyone, undergraduate student or otherwise, help with writing legislation, which means that it's just making it so that like there has to be someone, but there's always going to be an option for someone to be there. For purposes of designation and posterity, this Senate, having come into existence in the 39th year since the undergraduate student government was formed, shall be designated the 39th Senate. Again, it's a really silly little thing. This is the most substantial change. If 1/2 of the members of the, that should read Senate, not legislative branch, but we'll just leave it there for now. Legislative branch, sponsor a piece of legislation, it shall be put in the section of agenda known as consent. This would essentially mean that if you get half of the body, that's about 28, 29 people, to sponsor your legislation, it goes in a section called consent. It means that we assume that it's done by unanimous consent. Two things. One, any senator will have the power to object to an item being consented, which in that it's a case it's objected to, will be moved into new business. Second thing, governing documents, amendments, and budgets shall not be placed in consent, regardless of how many sponsors they have. Budgets and governing documents amendments are pretty important things. It doesn't matter how many sponsors they have, we should be considering those things at length. This is just to make it so there is brevity to what's happening here. If, generally speaking, if half the Senate body sponsors it, it's very likely to pass. So I think that it's reasonable for us to assume passage unless otherwise objected by members of the body. And with that, I will yield to questions.
Are there any questions? Sorry, I called on Chairperson Douglas, so we'll get to Senator Howard.
First of all, I'd like the addition of consent, but my question is towards the number 15. Seeing as all pieces of legislation will already require passage through a committee or 2 senators sponsoring it, why must a senator also be on the author line? And my question here is this reactionary, or why this change now, and why is it not in the legislation bylaw as opposed to in the Senate standard?
Yeah, so a couple things. One, it's members of the legislative branch, which is a little bit of a difference there, because that could include yourself, who is not a senator, but still a chairperson, a member of the legislative branch. 2, the idea behind it is there are processes that should be carried out by, understood and carried out by the author of the legislation beforehand, and not that I wish to preclude members of the public and other branches from writing legislation, because that's something that's been done in the past and continue, presumably, to be done in the future. I do want to make sure that there is some sort of protection against legislation coming before the body that's been written by individuals who do not have a lot or potentially any experience writing legislation, and then so potentially could be bog the body down in motions on amendments and misunderstandings that could just be fixed if at the baseline, at the get-go, from the get-go, a member of legislative branch.
Senator Howard, do you have a question?
If you could please elaborate on what the position of Dean of Senate will be functionally doing.
No, it's just a designation.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I guess going off of that point though, with the role that standing committees play, and I know that the role that my committee plays in forwarding bills and budgets, and then the role that the legislative coordinator has, their assigned role is to make sure that legislation is up to standard to correct any miscalculations or misverbiage, for lack of a better term. So I guess the fact that that's all covered by those positions before it gets in the Senate, I think the argument of limiting it to requiring a member of the legislative branch to be the author of it, I worry that it's reducing our ability to be inclusive of students to participate in our program, which I think is incredibly valuable. And I think if there are inconsistencies, I have full faith in Alex, our legislative coordinator, as well as the other committees to intercept those problems. I would rather be more inclusive.
Okay. Fair enough. That's a solid argument. So in that case, I'll motion to strike that number 15 by unanimous consent.
Yep. Any opposition? Any opposition to that? Seeing none. Okay. Yeah. Senator Allen, I believe you had a question.
My question was actually about the thing we discussed.
There you go. We love that. Okay. Anything else, folks? Any other questions? Love for some new senators. Maybe haven't spoken yet. Maybe think something to say.
No pressure.
Yeah, I know it's a lot. I don't want to put in the spot here, folks. But, no, that's fine. Okay. So, no point in discussion, maybe. Okay. With that, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of a motion? Okay. There's a motion regarding updated Senate standing rules. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Okay. Yeah, independent chair. Yeah, I have it. This motion clearly passes.
Okay, I should do this. Yeah. So just so we're clear where we are on the agenda, so now we're moving into the part where we're gonna, now the consent has been approved, are we gonna move the rest of the standing rules?
Yeah, so I'd like to make something else clear. Well, first of all, I often move by consent, but I am not the only individual that can move by consent. Any member of this body can motion to do something by unanimous consent, but any member of this body can also object to anything being done by unanimous consent. So what I am proposing on doing is not moving it to a section, these next items to a section, merely either A, motioning by unanimous consent to approve them, or B, if someone objects to that motion, motioning by unanimous consent to table them. Because I said about 6 minutes ago we would be done and we would move into discussion, give it on other things. And I would like to give that discussion its day. It's frankly more important than these things. So
I totally agree. I was just asking as a procedure note. Well, then I do have one motion. Before we move into anything else, I'd like to add one small thing to the agenda that's an important clarification for the External Affairs Committee.
Is this the item regarding the budget?
Yeah.
It's already on there.
It's already on there?
It should be at the bottom. Is it a bill concerning budget update?
Okay, so if we're going to be moving into the advocacy agendas and standing rules, can I request from the speaker or create a motion to move that item up on the agenda to now, so we can do that before all the stuff?
Yeah. So would you like? what you're saying is you probably wouldn't, do you want? Yeah, we'll move into consideration of this item. That's item.
Yes.
You don't have to move it around.
And the only reason why I urge it now is because the standing rules of the External Affairs Committee, but like for everybody's knowledge, it elicited in the USG budget right now. External Affairs for our Community Service Day has been elicited funding for food and other. I'll defer to the chairperson Douglas on this, but yeah, so basically, like, we need rakes, and we can't purchase supplies according to the budget. So we were hoping that we could just reword that item in the budget to include and supplies, which is all that it is. And I want to make sure that goes in before we approve the standing rules, which mention the rakes, of which we wouldn't be able to pay for.
If by standing rules, I believe you mean advocacy agenda.
Advocacy agenda?
Yes, okay. I am going to move the budget update into legislation. Is it not in there? It's called budget update, but it's not there. Mine, did you just send it?
I did.
Okay, so if you're in the group chat, the Senate group chat, not the Senate group chat, the USG group chat, it is in there, but I'm also about to move it into Senate's agenda, so bear with us for a moment. Say All right. It should be in there now. It's 3 whereas clauses. It's budget update : line item typo. Whereas the undergraduate student government has the power to amend its budget at any time, whereas yard work supplies are essential to community service, therefore be it resolved that the final line item pertaining to external affairs in fall 2019 budget shall read Community Service Day t-shirts, transportation, food, supplies. That's it. That's the entire legislation. All right. Since I just read it out to all of you, I don't know if you necessarily, I will yield to the author.
Yeah, this amendment is literally one word. It adds the word supplies. Vote yay if you want rakes, as as one of your peers so eloquently put it. But just an oversight on my own part when I wrote the budget request.
All right. I'm inclined to cap the speakers list at that. All those in favor of rakes, some would say, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? One from most. And depending on the chair, the ayes have it, motion carries. This is going to move pretty quickly, so we're either going to move it the next week or we're going to approve it this week. Resolution regarding external affairs standing rules. I motion to do this by unanimous consent. Are there any objections? Seeing none, it is so ruled. All right, next item. A bill concerning the 2019-2020 Student Development Advocacy Agenda. Motion to do this by unanimous consent. Are there any objections? No. Seeing none, it is so ruled. A motion concerning the 2019-2020 Academic Affairs Advocacy Agenda. Lee, could you wait until it's approved before you put it there, just not to jinx it? Are there any objections to this being done by unanimous consent? Seeing none. Bill concerning the 2019-2020 Student Services Advocacy Agenda. Are there any objections to this being done by consent? All right. Unanimous. You can say consent, that's absolutely fine as well, but all right, fine. So ruled. And a bill concerning 2019-2020 External Affairs Advocacy Agenda. Motion to do by unanimous consent. Are there any objections? Being none, is so ruled. Good job, everyone. Please. Get that done, because a lot of that legislation has been postponed literally since the night in which we considered impeachment. So we've been in the hole for the past month. We're finally back. Great. Thank you so much for your patience. Now on a little more serious note, I'm going to move into a discussion item, conversation regarding racial incidents on campus. I suppose I will just turn it over to all of you at this point. I will yield to the Chief of Staff to the President to start, and then we can go from there.
So, so for those that don't know, there were two very hard racial incidents that happened last week that specifically targeted students of color. The executive branch, at the very least, takes this extremely seriously, and considering you all, including the president, was elected to represent and defend the interests of students and to protect students, I really think that we should take a firm, strong stance in not only denouncing this and discouraging it, but also providing avenues for students to seek help or assistance in case they don't feel safe on this campus. Anything less than a complete it has to be bold. We have to be strong here. These are our students. If we are not protecting them, we are failing them. Thanks.
I'm actually inclined to heartily agree with that statement. As I said in my email today, the fact that this happened at all in any place, not just on our campus, is unacceptable in my mind. And if we fail to denounce that on any level, that is a failure of our one of the most basic responsibilities, not just as leaders and students, but as people.
So aside from obviously providing the resources and help in case anyone feels unsafe, do we have initiatives punitive initiatives to people that commit these acts? Not only the resources part of it for people who are affected by it.
I would direct my yield to the external affairs chair.
Yeah, so I had a brief conversation with the Dean of Students, and that the summary there is we as undergraduate student government do not have the power to take punitive action against students. There are real reasons for that, real legal implications. The way the university investigates this is in three parts. The dean's office does an investigation, community outreach does an investigation, and then the police do an investigation. Each will do their own thing to assess whether punitive measures are possible and to what extent those should go on the legal side. I personally believe that as advocates and protectors of the students, our responsibility comes into supporting those students and supporting those students effective, and making sure that those students know that those views do not represent that of the entire campus, and that they are still welcome members of the community. So to directly answer your question, no, the USG cannot, and in my opinion, should not take punitive measures against any individual.
So I was just curious, because I know about the incident at Charter Oak Apartments, but I was wondering what the second one is you were referring to?
I mean, it's touchy. I mean, there was an incident at a fraternity where a student of color was called a derogatory term by 3 other students. It was the same crowd. I don't know how else to say it. It was at a frat party. That's all I got.
I will yield back to Sophia and then.
So back to my question, it was more a question of, do we have the power to try to pass any kind of legislation, even if they don't approve it as administration? Because when we spoke about it earlier, the USG group chat, there was mention of trying to pass something verbal about this. So I was just confused as to what our role was in terms of the law and the law at UConn specifically.
Yeah, I apologize. I think I missed the point of your question. If you all take a look at the PERG's Facebook page, you'll see a statement from their executive board denouncing these actions. Similarly, this weekend, you will see one from USG's governing board, and in the coming weeks, I understand there's already legislation or a statement of position in progress to come through the Senate to then be released after next Senate. Does that we were going forward? Yep.
And of course goes without saying, but if you want to be involved in helping author that statement, like come up here afterwards, we'll direct you.
Senator Sewell. So I think it's really important that we discuss both these issues, but we also recognize that if you ask any person of color in this room, myself included, these instances often go unreported, often go without the press and the coverage these instances have garnered, and they are an everyday occurrence, or almost everyday occurrence on our campus. And that also, these instances are gaining a lot of attention simply because they were publicized and because of the nature of the severity of the slurs used. But again, I think if you ask every person of color in this room, even those who are not people of color, if they can think about a time when someone has acted insensitively in their presence, used a racial stereotype, used a gender-based stereotype, or other identity-based stereotype, it happens nearly every day. So I think as we have this really important conversation about these awful instances on our campus, we also have a conversation about those everyday occurrences that often go unreported, unseen, about how we take our campus to a point where we all recognize that racism, bigotry at any level, whether it be an unconscious bias or a very conscious use of a racial slur, from any place here on campus. So I think it's really important that we recognize that as well. I applaud the Speaker and the President's office and the entire leadership team for acting so swiftly on this.
To kind of capitalize off that point, that great point of Senator Sewell. Like, what are we gonna tangibly do, right? This, like, yes, we have these two instances here that don't look good on it. Like, we have to recognize it as Senator Sewell pointed out, this issue is much larger, and there has to be more that can be done. Because people of color, more often, and more easily get traumatized and have to go to see mental health professionals. And there needs to be more done about that, especially for the growing population that seems to need that, especially in today's time. So I think we need to ask ourselves, what can we tangibly do to address this issue so the environment where something like this never occurs?
Next, Senator Keenan.
So Chairperson Douglas mentioned that he spoke with the Dean of Students. Have they, by any chance, mentioned if they're taking any action in terms of like?
I'm sorry to interrupt. Yeah, we're just gonna like start passing around the microphone now. So.
So I know Chairperson Douglas mentioned that he met with the Dean of Students briefly. Have they mentioned that they might be open to changing any policy in regards to how they investigate things when it comes to these sort of incidents? Because several incidents have happened in the past, and every single time nothing ever really changes. So, or like, are we looking into like maybe speaking with them in regards to policy change?
Yeah. Did you get that? We'll yield to the President for that.
Yes. So the President and the Vice President, as I mentioned earlier, are actually with the Dean of Students right now at the Charter Oak Community Center. The President and the Vice President will be coming back with the Dean of Students. And if we are all still here in session, hopefully we will be, the Dean of Students would be happy to address that. But as soon as it was reported, Dean of Students has already acted swiftly. And Elections and Outreach Commissioner Nieves is essentially a task force to respond to this in the most effective way. That's open to everybody in the organization and the greater students. Does that answer your question? Cool.
Next, Senator Rodriguez.
So going back to what Senator Cerulli was speaking about, it's also very important to recognize and remember that even if someone isn't physically of color, you may unintentionally offend their background and their culture and where they come from by making a stereotypical comment. For example, I'm physically white, but I am 100% Puerto Rican, which is not typically a white person. But a specific example of an offense can be asking me, if not that this, I mean it has happened to me, I don't know, but it's asking, do you celebrate Cinco de Mayo? Or like go back to Mexico, stuff like that. Like it's completely irrelevant to Puerto Rico and its culture, and it's just keeping in mind that it's a much larger issue than just racial slurs. It's about your daily conversations, your daily comments, your daily participation in class, your daily questions. You just really never realize how it can affect a person until you take a step back and really think about what you're saying. So I just keep in mind that it goes way beyond just an act of racism. It goes way back and just yeah.
Next, Senator Howard.
It is on. Okay, that's awesome. So, in terms of answering Senator Kaplash's question about what we can tangibly do about this, the most intuitive thing to do, of course, is to condemn the act, and I join in those who are doing so. I think it's a great first step. And I'd also like to contribute a suggestion, which is to address the hate directly. I think we should note that hate is like an addiction, and those who find themselves in these hateful mindsets can often turn their lives around and become more informed members of society. And so bringing programs and speakers to this campus to help those people see the value in their peers and to help them work through whatever ignorance or hate they have may be beneficial in the future. But I welcome any of those suggestions.
Sir, I apologize to pronounce your last name.
Mohammed Singh. I think it's important when we're talking about these specific issues to note that at least in the second incident, the student was black, not just a person of color, because one of the perpetrators was a person of color himself. So I think when we're discussing this, we should discuss how people of color can offend other people of color and those type of incidents.
So I actually had a question and then also a potential way we can work on this. Is this even on? Okay. Anyway, so my question was, it's been a long time since I've been a freshman. I know there's a lot of training related to sexual assault, type of crime, that kind of things. With orientation, is there currently any inclusion training? Does anyone know diversity, inclusion, anything like that? Because I know a lot of organizations on campus to get recognition have to go through specific trainings to kind of like multicultural. Yeah.
There is. It's basically the same as point of view. It's like when it's like very basic questions, you can kind of go through without paying attention to it. So I just think it would be helpful if that was like maybe not like I almost want to say if you like put it into like a unit or an FYE instead of having it just on this online thing where you need to get at least 80% to pass.
Oh, so it's not even in person, it's online.
Yeah.
That's exactly kind of what I wanted to speak to, is maybe we had like student development or
I think Krishna wants to.
I have a little bit to go on that as well. Actually, there was the module I think you're referring to was developed by Dean of Students Ellie Daughtry this past year, in conjunction with actually a lot of members from USG who have since graduated, and there was extensive review by students at the time, and I think there's actually a lot of colloquial references to events that have happened in the past in there. Some freshmen who are coming in might not pick up on them necessarily, but it's, yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of references to protecting your pack or those type of language that's being used. So to answer the question, yes, and that has been developed with students like this past year and with the Dean of Students Advisor Group, which if Ellie comes in, she can talk about that as well.
I wanted to add that I just sent the link to the training that Senator Chana was mentioning. The same one that the incoming freshman class just had to take. I just sent the link to the description behind it and the instructions behind it to the so y'all can review that right here. Yeah, it's all online.
So I mean it is online, and I think that's part of the problem. It's just the conversation that needs to happen in person. So maybe that's something we can work with.
You don't. Next on the list, Comptroller Bylaw.
These attacks are nothing short of revolting, and I think it's important to say that because they should be handled very swiftly. So I know there's talks right now about a statement of position being drafted to be presented at the next Senate, and if that's 2 weeks from now, even 1 week from now, if the Speaker decided to call an emergency Senate to hear that, I really think that is too late. So if the Speaker would be willing, I really think we should put together a quick statement of position, asserting ourselves, perhaps encouraging even the administration to take full action. The strongest penalty, I really feel personally, should be assigned to whoever these people are, because like I said, I personally feel it is nothing short of revolting. So if you guys are in agreement with that, I think we should draft a statement of position and address it to the university administration and say that the student government, A, condemns these attacks, and B, encourages the administration to assert the strongest penalties that they can once these people are identified. I feel like if we do that, it will be received better, just because it shows that the undergraduate student senate acted very swiftly and took the concerns seriously. That's all I have to say.
Next is Deputy Speaker Wilson.
I'll send the invitation to the Vice President as well if you like. You just came from the meeting. I'm sure people love to hear about it. I'm just going to like.
Hi everyone. So Manny and I just came back from the meeting, and we're a lot of feelings right now. A lot of things happened, a lot of things were discussed. Why don't you take it now?
I'm just going to say that at the end of the day, we should definitely be, I think Fabio was talking about earlier, a little bit late, we should be having immediate action. Because this is not just about telling UConn that this is not okay, but also showing them that the undergraduate student government is doing something. Our mission is to advocate for the student experience, and right now there's a majority of students who are in the minority that are feeling as if their feelings are not validated. They haven't gotten a response from the administration yet, and so they're watching us right now. The students that are sitting in these seats, the students that are sitting up here, they're watching us and the actions we take. So whatever we come up with today should just be focused on validating these students first. Second, it should be processing it and really trying to convey the intentional actions that we're taking. So first and foremost, advertising the attachments that we're having on Sunday. And then also talking about the different platforms that you all have and the power that you have, because a lot of these students don't have the outlet. They don't have to go, they don't know, some of them don't even know about committee meetings. And so it's now your job to really start to talk about this within your committees and relay that back to us, relay that back to everyone on Senate leadership, and then we can start talking about different legislative processes that we can take. I'm just kind of still proud of really internalizing all these different motions, because it is very frustrating to be a student of color on this campus and have to hear about these different things, and then come here and have to represent everybody and then pretend like it's okay, because it's not okay. This is deeper than an incident that happened this weekend. There's so many different incidents that happened, and community standards cannot answer all of them. Residential life cannot answer all of them. Unit students, LE, that's also, you cannot answer all of them. Y'all are the ones that understand the student experience, so I need you to remember that during these times. And it might affect some of our daily operations, but that being said, that is why we're here. We're here today to talk about the student experience, to advocate for our student population, and right now, there are 19,000 students who are going to be watching every single thing that you are doing, and I ask that you act intentionally. That is all.
Okay, so, if you look around, there is not that many people of color that represent our students, and that's a problem in itself. Why aren't they here? What is the issue? Is it within us? Are we not welcoming? What's the problem? But the fact is that people of color every single day on this campus are not empowered to use their voice here. And it's hard for me and Manny, even as people of color, to lead this organization sometimes. And I need to be honest with you all because of that. It's very hard to lead. And so imagine me and Manny as two leaders, people of color, being here. Imagine all those voices that are not here in this room. There was very few undergraduate student government representation at this meeting. Granted that you all had Senate, but you should all be doing something, because every single one of your constituents is harmed by the racism events on this campus. And you should all be taking an active approach to doing something. Many of you, not all, focus too much time on internal policies, internal meetings, who's going to be running for president, and none of that is important. The one reason I ran for president wasn't because of the organization, it was because of the students. And I want all of you to think the same way, or at least try to. It doesn't matter what happens internally in this organization, but if we do nothing to support the students, then nothing is going to be done. If they can't rely on their undergraduate student government to do something, then who are they relying on? So ultimately, I want you all to change focus. Focus on why you are here and what you're doing every single day to benefit the students. Whether you're getting paid or whether you're not, you still have a duty to be here. You were voted, you were elected in, and it's your duty to do something. You cannot count on other people of color to do something. It's all of our duties to now make the change and to voice your concerns. So I'm really expecting you all to step up from now on. There are students in the room, the meeting that we just went to. Most of them are people of color. And that is very alarming. Because this room is not a majority people of color. So you have the privilege to be a representative of those people. And you should be, and you are. So ultimately, we're going to be taking action, and I want you to take action because you feel like you need to, and you have to take action. Because like I said before, if we don't, then who is? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that was very beautifully said by Priyanka. I just wanted to make a quick note. When we're addressing this issue, just keep in mind the intersectionality of it, how people can be impacted by this on multiple levels, of being a part of the LGBTQ community, being a person of color, being a woman, things like that. As we're acting and as we're acting intentionally, to keep in mind that the intersectionality of this issue.
So on the list we have Senator Hinton.
This hits a sore spot for me because there is a good friend back at home that was bullied from freshman year to senior year in high school about his race and the color of his skin. Someone who I think of as my brother, who I text almost every day, who I talk to almost every day, and who I feel like is family to me, even though he is not blood. And it hurt every day to see him get bullied, and when I try to help him and nothing gets done. And how I saw him break every day, and I had to help pick up those pieces. And I feel there is not enough attention to what is being happening to these people. We are focusing on the hate and the consequences of the people who are doing this, but we are not focusing on who it is being affected by. We are not helping them seek counseling. We just want to help fix the problem. But we're not helping the people who are being attacked. And I feel we should take, just like Senator Kaplash said, a tangible thing that we should be doing is helping them seek counseling. Because it is hard to watch somebody get torn down just because the color of their skin, nothing that they can do. And I just feel we should take more action to help these people instead of against what is being done. Because consequences to the people who are doing this are important, but helping the people that are being affected by this are also as equally important.
Bylaw has yielded her time, so Senator.
Thank you. I know that it was mentioned that one of the incidents involved one of the Greek councils, and I'm just as curious as to what if USG would be open to kind of opening the lines of communication with some of the interfraternal councils. As someone who is a Panhellenic woman and as someone who has dealt with many racial issues from certain Greek councils, I do think it's really important that they're part of this conversation as well. I'm not trying to pin a lot of this on them, but there is an issue in the Greek community, and the fact that one of these instances is from the Greek community just again notes how this is something that I think needs to be addressed more. I mean, I think it's great that we're having this conversation in this room, but I think someone from that part of campus needs to be in here too, and holding those people accountable. So I don't know what Manny or Priyanka or who else or what you guys plan on doing, but I think it's absolutely crucial that whatever interfraternal council that was is 100% involved in this, and that they're being held accountable, and that there is some sort of segue into education, because there is ignorance, and a lot of the cultural and diversity, like inclusion stuff they do, is nothing but to reach cap or whatever it is they need to do. So I just want to know what it is that you guys would suggest for that. Thank you.
At this point, we have about information. As Comptroller Sacramento suggested, that we quickly draft a statement position. You have to explain how that would happen if it's possible.
So it's already actually done. If you all look in the drive, Chairperson Douglas has typed something up called Statement on Recent Events, and as of right now, it is very brief. I had intended, after we had completed discussion, so everyone had a chance to speak their mind on things, to vote on this, because I want to give everyone this forum to talk about how they feel and how they were affected by this, because that is important. We are students, individuals as well. But if we would like, we can do this and then continue with the discussion. It is honestly up to you guys. I have no preference. John?
Another point. So similar to how we did the press release for like past issues like this, things like that, how do we go about who would be writing that press release?
Yeah, so so the executive branch of the organization is responsible for carrying that out. But generally speaking, they'd have to obtain the approval of the Senate to do that. But I think it's very fair to say that on an issue this one-sided, that it is absolutely fair for the executive branch of this organization to speak on behalf of all of us in this regard. I would actually go so far as to say, well, a statement of position is something that if we want to approve tonight, it's wonderful. Like, it is not necessary in the fact that, like, the statement will not be issued this weekend on behalf of the governing board. It will be issued on behalf of all of us, because it should be issued on behalf of all of us. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Would people like to vote, just a quick straw poll, would you like to vote on the legislation now and then move into discussion? Or would you rather continue with discussion and then move into a vote? Yeah, go ahead, Lisa. That's good. So with that, we'll move, continue moving to discussion. Continue to move through discussion rather. Senator Ryan?
Yeah, while we can make a position, and I believe we will, honestly, from what I've heard today, I feel like it is our job as senators to really talk to our constituents. And I know, because I've talked to many senators here, I'm one of the only senators who does town hall meetings on a weekly basis, actually, twice a week. And as a senator, I feel like it is our job to really talk to the people, because we could, we can make a position, we can try to bring programs around, but really what matters is what us as a Senate use our power for and our time for. And I think that should be to talk with our constituents and learn about these issues, because these happen. This is not a regular occurrence on this campus. It has to do a lot with, I think, Connecticut culture being very a state plagued with issues of diversity and urbanization and such. It has to do with white supremacy in this country growing. And I feel like we have to talk with our constituents and make more of these events public, put them in the public eye if we want real change. Yes, and I think that would be for any issue, and especially this issue, because unless we vocalize our constituents' issues, they will not be vocalized. So please take the time out of your weeks to hold town hall meetings, even if it's once a month, just so you can talk with your constituents, get the issues down, and bring them before here for the paper, for the university, so we can address these issues. Thank you very much.
Colin.
I first of all want to say that Senator Ibrahim, I can put you in touch with the director of the Office of Fraternity and Sorority Life. They actually renamed it. I don't know what it is.
It's C something.
Yeah,
it's, yeah.
And so yeah, that's that. I just wanted to say that senators who are white and people in USG who are white, we really need to be mindful of things like white guilt and speaking up for people of color and speaking over people of color. I think it's important that we don't center ourselves in this movement. This movement isn't for us. It's less focused on us being sorry and more of what we can do to change this and ensure it never happens again. And that starts with small things, calling out microaggressions, stereotypes, jokes, being at that party where everyone says the N-word in the song and none of them are black. But that also means lifting underrepresented voices, showing up to cultural center dialogues and events. They hold so many. I know a lot of Greek organizations in the Intercultural Greek Council like to hold things that talk about issues within their communities because there's different fraternities and sororities with different interests. And I think, showing up and representing ourselves and USG at those events is something that's really important. And just seeking out resources about how we can be better allies and how we can put the focus not on ourselves.
So I completely agree with that. That's kind of what I was going to address. Although immediately taking much bigger action on this general issue is incredibly crucial, I just want to keep you all grounded and remind you that change really begins with the little things, such as standing up for someone in the moment and not just overhearing something and reporting it later. Because there's really nothing more frustrating than a so-called activist and who is really just a bystander in these situations. If you're truly behind this bigger movement of equality, you have to start by stepping in these situations, little comments, stereotypical comments, and start directly shutting these perpetrators down. Whether that's a stranger, a friend, a professor, a family member. If you want change, you cannot be afraid to address this the second you witness it, and if you do, in my opinion, you are part of the problem.
Chairperson Douglas.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more. I think that sometimes things, real action gets too often confused with social media activism, right? A retweet or one statement one time doesn't do anything for anyone. Even I would go so far as to say that the statement that we just had up there a moment ago is not a solution to anything. It is more so, I think, it's a step to show like our constituents that we've heard and are aware of their concerns, but it does not do anything for them. I think that when we talk about this and we talk about what can we do in the near and long term, and we can't ignore things, or before I get there, not all of our solutions here are going to be policy, right? So that does, maybe there are some policies that need to change within the university, but not all changes are going to be around policy. Right now, student development is working on a cultural appreciation series, right? To bring attention to these communities and to showcase what these communities have to offer. And I think that it would be disingenuous of us to talk about policy, talk exclusively about Greek life, or talk exclusively about what white students at this one party did, as opposed to what are we doing to make sure that things like this don't happen again. So I would encourage all of you. Chairwoman Aponte earlier today posted, or earlier in the week posted, those graphics for all of you all to share with your constituents and your friends, right? That right there is a step in and of itself to beginning to showcase and make sure that things like this don't happen. There are actual actions within each of your power to begin to take steps away from where we see the current culture within the student body of this university towards somewhere that we do want to see. To wrap up, I noticed that the Dean of Students had walked in, and I just wanted to yield to her briefly to say a few words or whatever she'd like to share with us.
Thanks, hi everybody. It's kind of an emotional night for life. So I really just want to applaud Priyanka and Manny, who was with me, who were with me earlier at the meeting. And I want to tell you what we heard and what we experienced in that meeting is something that I hear and experience from our students of color all the time, which is I don't matter. I don't feel like I belong on this campus. And that's our bad, right? I appreciate the 2 points that came forward here from Sophia and I don't know your name, Lindsay? Liz, because this is our UConn that is made of students who come from every walk of life and who will change the world. And if any student is on this campus feeling as though they don't matter, then UConn has failed a little bit. And that is our problem, from whatever identity we come from. And it is our solution to create. And I am so happy to be here, sitting here in the back and listening to everyone saying it's one step forward, it's acting at the party. Because what I keep thinking about is, how are we living our values after hours, right? We're all gonna go home, we're gonna put on some comfy clothes, some of you may be going to parties later this week, some of you will hear jokes in the hallway. What will we do when that happens? Because I wanna stop these events on campus, but I can tell you they are happening on our campus and on other campuses across the country. And it has to be a groundswell from within if we really wanna welcome and cherish every student that is here at UConn. Because I do welcome and cherish all of you. Because I know that there is a world that you will be changing, and that is my fire within me. And I'm grateful to all of you for what you do, but we have to live it every day, every hour, every minute for us to truly resolve the problem that the students were sharing with us earlier tonight. And it's not for an agency or a person, it is for us. It is for all of us to work to resolve. So I'm happy to talk about what the university does. Of course we're taking action. But all of that is failing because we have these students who we just left who didn't have enough allyship in the room with a broader group of identities and who didn't have broader support across the campus so that they know how much they matter. And that is my commitment to all of you, and I know it's your commitment to your constituency as well. So that is our question. That is my commitment to all of you, that you know you are all cherished, and whenever we misstep, whenever we wrong, ourselves or one another, we rise up and we try to remedy that. Because this is a long journey, it is a cultural shift, but it's something we believe in because of how important all of you are to our future. And to me, that's the imperative. You have to change the world, and that's only gonna happen if you know how much you mean to this campus and to the world you're gonna shape. So I can talk technically about what we're doing, I'm happy to do that. I have some observations that may or may not be welcome. But I'm happy, if I may, Manny, to take a few questions. I'm sorry, Damani, you gave me the floor, to take some questions. Yes?
So I'm wondering, as I know, there's probably a student conduct investigation in this as well as police investigation. I'd like to know what's being done, perhaps by the Office of General Counsel or someone to investigate whether the civil rights of these students have been violated. It's obviously put in an environment that's not conducive to their safety or well-being. And so I want to know if there had been anything by the Office of General Counsel to investigate potential civil rights violations.
Yeah. So it would be the role of the Office of Civil Rights to investigate civil rights violations and for the university to comply and partner with them. And there would be a complainant that would issue that. What we do in cases like these, the university has a bias response protocol that we created about 5 years ago to improve the work that we were doing. And there's 3 things we do right away. So one is we notify the police. So in this case, There's an active police investigation going. The one I'm referring to is the tweet, the video of the activity outside. We notify community standards so they can conduct an investigation because the student code of conduct and the laws of the state of Connecticut are two different things that you can be accountable to. And then we engage the community, and that was the meeting that we came from. So in this case, it happened in the residential community, so Res Life engages the impacted community. A couple of points of takeaway that I have from the conversation today is we may not be impacting a broad enough, we may not be defining a broad enough audience for those who are impacted, particularly when it's social media, right? We made it geographic, and there may be a need for us to think more broadly about how we engage and support students right away when incidents happen. So that's the answer to your question. That's what we do. I will note though, that's what we do when incidents are reported to us. And so I can't emphasize enough, since we all are committed to the university taking action right away, we can't do it until we receive a report. And in one of these cases, a report wasn't received. I was notified of it by a colleague and made a report from it. So making the university aware of incidents enables us to respond quickly and comprehensively to issues when they arise. So in this case, General Counsel is aware, but the investigation is led by the police and community standards.
And just to follow up, you said that the student themselves need to initiate a civil rights investigation?
The process for working with OCR is on their website, which is a federal site. So, but in this case, I don't need a student to complain. I'm aware of what has happened. And so I automatically refer it to the police and to community standards. Our goal then is to talk to impacted parties, see if we can identify a complainant. Yeah, Liz.
I have two quick questions. One is, so I know that you work with students who commit these acts of hatred. And how would you deal with, for example, a faculty member and an adult? And I don't remember if you saw that video. I think that was last semester about this woman who was berating this black student over a parking space. And
Oh, yes.
clearly they weren't a student, it was an adult. So how would you go about doing that?
So I don't have a role because I'm responsible for the students, but the police could have a role in situations like these. If it's an employee, human relations would have a role in this, as would the Office of Institutional Equity, which is any case of discrimination.
And then my second question was, how is there any way that, how transparent are you allowed to be with these incidences, as opposed to putting out how often they occur, statistics, what can you give and what can't you give based on privacy and all these things?
So that's an excellent question and one I'm grappling with right now, right? Because one of the choices the university did make through a group that some of us were involved in, when we created, how many first-year students do we have here? So they have taken a required diversity education program. And when we created that program, we decided to have it be our truth. So we based scenarios in that program that I know you all loved taking on actual bias incidents at UConn, and we owned it. So we said every incident that you're talking about resembles something that happened here. So we were able to find a space where I was protecting the privacy of the individuals involved, but was also telling our truth. Because I think it was very important for everyone involved in the planning that we be authentic to UConn, that we talk very candidly about we are an aspiring institution, but we're not yet there, right? We have issues of bias on our campus, and it's something we take very seriously. So that was one approach that we took just recently. I don't report the bias data because the bias protocol is not a required protocol for every university person to use. So we do report our Title IX reports, for example, because we know everyone is required to report. I don't do that for our bias data because I'm concerned it's misleading. That you won't see it even, if you look at that to learn where are incidents happening, it would be misleading, right? It's only those who choose to report. And then yes, one of the harder things in these incidents is the privacy of the students involved is foremost on my mind and leads to a distance in communication to others. And that's just the line we need to walk, and we need to find a way to make sure the community is engaged and aware, and we're protecting the privacy of the individuals involved.
So sorry, you said you can't provide the information. Is it?
I'm sorry?
You said you
disclose information that is unique to a specific student?
Before like the general case of
Oh, yeah. Right, so the bias data is not published because it isn't representative of all incidents. Does that make sense?
What could it be?
It could, and I'd be willing to rethink it and sort of present why we landed where we landed, which is, of course, we can share our bias incidents that arise. We can use that as training grounds when we work with other students. I could talk to it in more detail, but it sounds like you have an organization forming that I would be happy to present to and talk to about why it isn't publicly disclosed right now. If it was a required protocol that everyone use it across the campus, then I feel like we would be presenting representative data.
Before we move on to other questions, I'm going to give it to the president.
So I just got an announcement from UCTV to relay this to all of you, which I hope that you're able to relate to your constituents as well. So on the night of the next day, UConn Police Department was made aware of posting and immediately started an investigation to identify those students involved, individuals involved. We have since spoken to several people knowledgeable of the incident, both witnesses and third parties, and arranged several interviews, which at this point has not led to any leads. UCPD will also be collecting information for Wi-Fi routers in the area and door swipe data to also try to determine who was in the area during the time frame of the incident. We hope to be able to identify those involved. However, it may take several weeks to filter through digital data and possibly video surveillance. So this is just an update on the investigation. A lot of students have been asking what action has been done on the side of the UCPD, as they're actively working on the investigation.
I will say this too as a credit to our police department at UConn. They take these incredibly seriously. So within an hour of me knowing about it, I was talking to the chief. And we have arrested individuals in the past for actions similar to these. We have prosecuted, we have expelled. When we have the means to do so, we absolutely want to be holding individuals accountable. And I credit our police for being willing to pursue this with the state's attorney's office when they've been able to. So I take that very sincerely from them. I know they're working hard. Yes?
I have a few questions. The first question is, can you submit a report anonymously or
no. But if that was important, I want to know.
Well, I'm just looking at the report on my computer, and the first 4 questions are reporter's full name, position, phone number, email address.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I don't know, I feel like if a student was saw something and just don't want to be involved in whatever is reported, they should be allowed to do so anonymously.
There's something that's come up from Greek organizations, because I've been interested in speaking with them a lot recently, is that they too would appreciate a confidential reporting line, they didn't have to disclose. We do have a tipster line through the police department that you can use, and they would of course inform me as appropriate. But that's one thing I'm looking at community standards development. Is there a way through community standards, biases through the Dean of Students Office, so through a conduct avenue of the university, for you to do a confidential release of information that would allow us to know about something without you having to feel as though you're identified? Is that something others think is important for us to be doing? Yes? Yeah. Good, that's really good.
And then my second question
Yes.
is, do you have any tangible evidence, we were talking about the evidence earlier, but that this bias-specific protocol is working or including science where it has improved the situation?
What would improvement be? What would be your measure?
How would you?
So, if success means holding students accountable so that you're looking at expulsion, suspension, or arrest from the university, that is not the predominant thing that occurs when we have bias incidents reported to us. If success means that because we are learning more and more about bias incidents when they happen, or bias-related incidents, so this means things that don't hit the standard, right? You don't hit the Connecticut state law, you don't hit the code, but it is still impactful upon the community, which I feel is very important that bias capture all of that. Then yes, I think bias is bringing us to a place where we have had over the last 5 years more conversations with students about the impact of language on campus than we had in the 5 years prior. So that, I think, is the success of bias. I think where we struggle is if our success is solely in a sanction, the bar is so high for what you have to hit a hate speech standard, our behavior on campus is jokes, language that isn't targeted, that is deeply hurtful to those who hear it. So for example, we put a scenario in orientation that has a student walk by in a hallway and hear an offensive term that directly relates to their identity, but it wasn't said to them, they were just talking in the room and the door was open. What is that? And that's the question in orientation, right? That is taken directly from an incident that happened on campus, right? And then you get into that more and you realize, well gosh, when I look around the hall, there aren't that many underrepresented students here. So think about how impactful it was to be quoting a lyric, I think to your point, Liz, and then realizing how impactful it was upon another. And that's our choice, right? You won't get in trouble for quoting a lyric, but you will hurt someone who has every reason to be valued on this campus. And that's a lot of where I think at UConn, our education and engagement has been.
Just, I don't mean to interrupt. Can everyone who has questions raise their placards just so we have like a codified list? 1, 2, you're all set over here? Okay, I apologize.
Great. Luke?
Yes. First, thank you for coming today. I think it means a lot to the Senate and hopefully anyone watching the student body. So you answered my first. I have 2 questions. You answered the first one about accountability for these people. But I was still curious about anonymous reports because I feel that a lot of us senators should reach out to our constituents and try to hear about these incidents. Would it be proper to make a report on behalf of someone anonymously, and so that we can have some relief in our constituencies?
Sure. Any effort you want to make to inform the university. Here's the other thing. It tells us how to educate and engage, right? I mean, we did the diversity education program in large part based on the information we had from bias. And not entirely though, because actually the student reaction to that was, well, the bias cases are too severe. They're not the predominant issue, right? The predominant issue is you're touching my hair, or stereotyping me, or calling on me to represent something greater than myself. That's not coming up in our bias reports. And yet that is what our students are saying. That's my truth. That's what's going on. So any way we can be informed of incidents on campus and how we can engage and correct is important. Yeah.
Next on the list, Senator Lee.
Hi. Couple of questions. My first one is, for typical offenses, like what are I guess the level of severities that UConn typically deems offenses, and what are the punishments that go accordingly?
So there isn't an if this then that, but I can tell you over the past we have used sanctions ranging from a corrective conversation with a student to expulsion on issues that relate to identity.
And then I know you probably have the specific numbers in mind, but out of the number of cases reported, how many of them actually get or the people who are the cases that are reported against actually get either a warning or something? Because I know a lot of times there isn't enough evidence.
That's a great point. Yeah, so every case that's reported where we have names of individuals involved. So sometimes we're informed of